I'm a digital sociologist, and it might initially be a bit weird to think that a digital sociologist is doing sociology with coffee and in a cafe. But I want you to imagine that you enter a cafe. It could be a local cafe or somewhere that you've never been before. What do you do? Do you go and order your coffee first, or do you go and find a seat first? And if you find a seat, are you making sure that it's near a PowerPoint if you've got a laptop? And imagine that you have to ask the barista a question. Are you asking him where the bathroom is, or are you asking him what the Wi-Fi password is? And when you get your coffee, when it's delivered to your table, do you take a sip of it, or do you post it to Instagram? Studying in a cafe isn't a new thing. In London, there's been cafes since the 17th century, and they were places that were considered to be relatively egalitarian. I say relatively, women weren't really there apart from the woman that you can see there serving the coffee. But they were places where people could gather and talk and discuss the news of the day. I think there was one cafe in London in the 17th century that actually had a post box that you could post your letters to the editor in. That was the kind of discussion and heated arguments that they would get into. They would get so enthusiastic about that. And it's a really interdisciplinary area to study. You have historians studying it, you have sociologists studying it, you have human geographers thinking about the layout and how people move about and learn the space. And then you have people involved in science and technology studies like me having a look at what's going on as well. And cafes are great because life happens there, people talk, people do things, people just sometimes act a bit strange and do things completely out of character. I chose to study how tech has influenced cafe culture, and it was mostly responsible from this sign that I saw in a cafe in Bloomsbury about 2 years ago now. I was really interested in why technology would disrupt the life of a cafe to the extent that they would have to turn it off and get rid of it for a certain amount of time. So I conducted an ethnography over the summer of 2013 as part of my digital sociology dissertation. And I was particularly interested in observing how people use digital devices in the space, particularly electricity and Wi-Fi. So I spent maybe 10 days over about 6 weeks looking at how people use their devices and appropriated them. So, for instance, one weekend I saw a small family, 2 parents and their teenage daughter, just sitting around not talking to one another, and that's really weird in a cafe to have people not talking to one another. But the daughter had her phone in front of her face like this, so she was almost appropriating it like she would use her bedroom door to shut her parents out if they were at home. So instead of using a door, she used her phone to shut her parents out. Other people, so there were a lot of freelance developers and creative folk in this space, so they would use their MacBooks to punctuate conversation. If they were discussing a certain bit of code, they would pull out their MacBook and show a piece of code to someone, and then as soon as that piece of conversation had passed, and they would shut it because the artifact was no longer needed. And there were things like learning the Wi-Fi becomes a way of belonging in the space. So in the particular cafe that I looked at, they had a secret Wi-Fi network that they would give the details of to regular customers and people that they trusted, which was actually a lot better Wi-Fi. And when they were when the regular Wi-Fi was on the blink, they would just you could see all the non-regular customers move out. And there were moments when someone discovered that they weren't part of the secret Wi-Fi network. There was a quote from my field notes which said, "What, a secret Wi-Fi network? I've been using regular people Wi-Fi just like an animal," and things like that. So technology actually shows that you've learnt and belonged to a place. Yeah, that's why as a digital sociologist, apart from being a caffeine addict, this is why I chose to study in a cafe, because I think that the way that we use tech and incorporate it into our everyday lives is deeply, deeply fascinating.